Dive right in. When we talk about all this crazy organ development, it is so easy to picture something substantial, but the reality of the scale here is just mind-blowing. At week 5, the embryo is incredibly small. We're talking only a few millimeters long. It is literally smaller than a grain of rice. Honestly, you wouldn't even recognize it as a baby yet if you could see it. And yet, within that tiny, microscopic space, biological development is happening at lightning speed. It's the ultimate juxtaposition, really. The physical space it takes up is tiny, but the internal changes, they are absolutely monumental.
Okay, so before we look closer at those internal changes, we really have to address the confusing math of pregnancy. You might be at the 5-week mark, but in reality, you are actually only about 3 weeks post-conception. Sounds totally backward, I know, but the thing is, pregnancy is counted from the first day of your last menstrual period, not from the actual day you conceived. So when you hit week 5, the embryo itself has really only been developing for about 3 weeks.
Now, the really crucial point is, if implantation successfully happened during this window, your body is undergoing a massive chemical shift. Your pregnancy hormones are rising super fast, and the absolute star of the show right now is HCG. This is the exact hormone that pregnancy tests are designed to pick up on. The sudden rise of HCG is the trigger. It's the whole reason those 2 pink lines appear on the stick, and it's also the main reason you might suddenly start noticing that your body feels just a little bit different, usually starting with a missed period.
But you might be wondering, how does that big hormone shift actually translate to how you feel day to day? Well, it varies wildly, and honestly, this brilliantly highlights one of the most unpredictable parts of early pregnancy. You might be feeling unusually exhausted, or your breasts might feel super tender. But, and this is absolutely crucial for you to hear and take away from this explainer, you might also feel absolutely nothing at all. And yes, that is completely normal and completely valid. Not everyone gets hit with symptoms at the exact same time. So if you feel totally normal, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. That invisible construction work is still well underway.
Let's zoom back in on that embryo and see how this is all building. We know it's the size of a grain of rice, but what is actually forming in there? Well, right now, the embryo is rapidly dividing and organizing itself into 3 distinct, highly specialized layers of cells. Think of these layers as the ultimate biological blueprint. Scientists call them the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. And these 3 microscopic layers are going to eventually contribute to entirely different tissues and organs throughout the whole human body. Basically, everything that makes up a human being starts from the biological magic of these 3 tiny layers.
And within those cell layers, we find the absolute superstar of week 5, the neural tube. Now, how does this actually form? It's amazing. Imagine a flat little plate of cells. Right now, it's starting to actually curl inward, folding and literally zipping up on itself to create a hollow tube. This incredible zipping process forms the absolute core foundation of the entire brain and spinal cord. Because this neural tube folds and zips up so incredibly early, often before a person even realizes they're pregnant, the environment inside the body needs to be perfectly prepped. That is exactly why getting enough folic acid is so critical right now. If you're trying to conceive or could become pregnant, having enough folic acid directly supports this precise, rapid folding and zipping of the neural tube. It's a real game changer.
Naturally, when people learn about the brain and spinal cord forming, they immediately jump to another vital organ. We see this question all the time. Does my baby's heart beat at 5 weeks? It's such a highly emotional question, right? But the answer isn't just a simple yes or no. It requires us to gently separate the biological facts of what's happening at the microscopic level from what our modern technology can actually show us on a screen.
Because here's the thing, there is a massive gap between the microscopic reality and our outward expectations. Biologically speaking, the primitive heart structure is absolutely forming right around this time, and it's even developing its very early activity during this period. That's just a biological fact. However, we often expect to walk into a doctor's office and hear this strong, recognizable, rhythmic thump-thump-thump on a standard ultrasound. But at 5 weeks, it is usually simply way too early to hear that.
And that brings me to a really important piece of reassurance. Because we expect to see so much, these super early scans can sometimes cause completely unnecessary panic. What you can actually see on an ultrasound at this stage depends entirely on exactly how far along you are, literally down to the day, and the specific quality of the equipment being used. So if you go in for an early scan at 5 weeks and you don't see everything you expected, or you don't hear that strong heartbeat yet, please know it does not automatically mean something is wrong. More often than not, it is simply just too early for the machine to pick up what the embryo is doing.
All right, let's pull back from the microscopic embryo and talk about you and what you might be physically experiencing as week 5 rolls on. Now, like we said, you might feel nothing,
But for many people, the symptoms start getting very real right about now. You might feel extreme tiredness, and I mean the kind where you wake up after a full 8 hours and still feel completely exhausted. You might have tender, heavy, or really sensitive breaths. Then, of course, there's nausea. And let's clear this up right now. Despite the cute name morning sickness, this nausea can hit you in the morning, the afternoon, late at night, or literally all three. You might also be making the bathroom your second home with frequent urination, dealing with bloating, or having sudden mood swings where you're totally fine 1 minute and crying at a commercial the next. And finally, food aversions. This is a strange quirk where your absolute favorite meal suddenly smells like a biohazard, or just the scent of someone cooking next door triggers severe nausea.
But wait a second. Look closely at this list of symptoms. Cramping, breast tenderness, bloating, fatigue, mood changes. Do you see the problem here? The really confusing reality is that early pregnancy symptoms look exactly like premenstrual symptoms. The overlap is massive. And because of this, you just cannot rely on how your body feels to know for sure. Symptoms alone simply cannot confirm a pregnancy. The only reliable differentiator between your impending period and a week 5 pregnancy is a pregnancy test.
Which leads to a really common scenario. What happens if you took a test, it came back with a big fat negative, but your period is completely MIA? Well, as we learned earlier, HCG levels are rising rapidly right now, but they have to hit a certain threshold for a test to actually turn positive. You might have simply tested a few days too early. So the best approach? Just wait a bit and repeat the test later, making sure to follow the specific instructions on the kit. And hey, if you've already gotten that positive test, congratulations. But keep in mind that early pregnancy, even at this microscopic, invisible stage, deserves proper medical care.
So, what should you actually be doing right now? Well, here are some really actionable steps to support all that incredible internal work. First, if it's recommended for you, take a prenatal vitamin that contains that all-important folic acid we talked about to support the neural tubes zipping up. Second, absolutely avoid alcohol and smoking. Third, always check with a healthcare professional before taking any new medications or supplements, even over-the-counter stuff. Fourth, stay hydrated and focus on eating a balanced diet. And lastly, get enough rest. Remember, your body is doing a tremendous amount of work, even if you can't see a single outward change yet. Give yourself some grace and the energy you need.
To wrap up this explainer today, let's just look at the big picture. Right now, your embryo is just a few millimeters long. You definitely can't see a bump, you might not even feel a thing. But the basic foundations for the brain, the spinal cord, the heart, and the major body parts are actively being laid down as we speak. The construction has absolutely begun. And honestly, this is kind of just the quiet before the storm, because next comes week 6, a time when development kicks into an even higher gear, and many women experience amazing